Please welcome back Louis Randa.
Thank you. I'd like to just say how deeply moved I am by the words spoken today and the songs and the general sentiment of love that just is felt in your presence. So thank you for allowing me to just share a bit about my 50-year journey. So I shall begin with this. There is a place in each of our hearts that holds a dream that is uniquely ours. Some dreams seem commonplace, while others are decidedly radical in nature. Certainly radical by the standards of the times and special education in 1972, which is the subject of my talk. However unique our dreams may be, they are always shared by countless others, known and unknown, for dreams are that invisible thread of hope woven into the cosmic order of things that binds us together, both in our waking hours and during times of slumber. We dream so we can be in touch with, in Lincoln's words, the better angels of our nature. And we dream, as Bobby Kennedy would say at the end of his speeches during the presidential campaign of '68, of things that never were. And these dreams challenge us to say, why not? For over half a century, I have been pursuing a dream born of a nightmare. The dream is peace, and the nightmare came in stages. First was what happened to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he went to Memphis to support the sanitation workers who were striking for better working conditions and higher wages. We all carry images of his murder on that balcony at the Lorraine Motel. It is seared into our collective consciousness. 2 months later, just minutes after delivering his victory speech, having won the California primary, Bobby Kennedy uttered his last public words. It's on to Chicago, and let's win there. The crowd, you may recall, was so enthusiastic and overflowing at the Ambassador Hotel ballroom in LA that when he was about to depart, he was directed to take a shortcut to the kitchen. We know what happened there. And then you may recall what happened in Chicago under the tyranny of Mayor Richard Daley and the forceful measures taken against protesters at the Democratic National Convention. Mayhem, burnings, violence, chaos, arrests. And a mold was set, a new one, for a generation of peacemakers who were left traumatized. We were young, inspired by both Kennedy and King. We were left to find our own way, left to make sense of it all. My story is that of other peace activists of the 60s that pledged that Bobby Kennedy and Dr. King did not die in vain, that their sense of idealism and vision for a better America, a better world, would become our mission in life. Pivotal for me, oddly enough, was holding that military-issued M16 rifle against my shoulder and shooting rounds into human silhouettes during boot camp in 1969. Only to feel, and rightly so, that being trained to kill, I had more in common with Sirhan Sirhan and James Earl Ray than my mind could tolerate. The Vietnam War was raging. I survived in my own skin if and only if I took action to stand up against killing. The choice was clear. I steadfastly refused to be part of any organization or group or agency of government that would permit the killing of a fellow human being. Take a moment now and think of those groups, jobs, relationships you refuse to be part of. In this respect, we all are conscientious objectors to situations that would lead us down the wrong path. I was 21 years old at the time. I just graduated from the University of Iowa. I'm from Des Moines. And I couldn't, as hard as I tried, shake off the trauma of my two mentors being summarily murdered so young. For those who know me well, these assassinations, performed with the slightest twitch of the index finger, pressed up against the trigger of a gun, left an indelible mark on my psyche. Those emotional wounds have never completely healed. Where were you when these two men were assassinated? Or John Kennedy, John Lennon, Harvey Milk, George Floyd, Trayvon Martin? The list is endless. With Kennedy and King, some may have been too young to remember, or it was before your time. But each of us carries some trauma from violence perpetrated on those we love, on themselves perhaps, or those we read about in the paper or see in the evening news. Tragedy is a call to action and can determine the trajectory of your life. We each walk through life to one degree or another, damaged by the inhumanity, the violence and hatred we are surrounded with, if not personally, then on the news. I learned during the tumultuous decade of the 60s to detest violence and war, and vowed never to permit myself to be used as a weapon for the foreign policy of any politician. For me, after a lengthy hunger strike in the Army, which led to my discharge as a conscientious objector, it was the creation of the Life Experience School and the Peace Abbey that would begin the lifelong healing process. The goal of this little school of life for children with disabilities, now in its 50th year, was to empower those in our care to live with the awareness that their disability was an extraordinary qualification to bring out the best in others. Pure and simple, this is the definition of a peacemaker. I believe then, and even more so now, that disabilities are unique and powerful qualifications for a peacemaker. Came to become our brand of activism. Yet the question remained, could a school founded on the principles of nonviolent direct action maintain its activist stance over time? It became clear from the moment we filed papers of incorporation with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to start the school that we would need to subvert the Department of Education curriculum guidelines and reinterpret them through the lens of lessons and tactics taught in SDS trainings on college campuses. The Students for Democratic Society, founded by Tom Hayden, laid the groundwork for alternatives in education and progressive politics writ large. Was it possible, I asked myself, to take Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed and apply it to children with special needs? Could we apply praxis, the combination of reflecting and acting on the world, to change the field of education, at least as it was practiced in our school? And were we sufficiently committed to liberating the spirit of the children with disabilities through social engagement and peacemaking programs and projects, protests, demonstrations, and nonviolent civil disobedience? Could our students find their power through promoting peace with an edge? We discovered early on, I believe it was 1979, when asked to decorate the town of Sherborne's library Christmas tree. But we wanted what we did to matter. So we decorated that tree with anti-war and anti-nuke posters. It was, after all, in honor of the Prince of Peace. Well, it was immediately taken down by the head librarian. We protested. The select board was consulted, and the tree was reinstated with each and every brochure that we put up. That sort of marked us as renegades in the community. Something as simple as decorating a Christmas tree with a peace message. Over the decades, we continued to find creative ways to bring about change that utilize the students' unique skills and their unique disabilities. Over the decades, we sought to build a diverse coalition of peacemakers to amplify our impact as we pioneered peace education in the early 70s. This we have done through honoring well-known and lesser-known peace activists with the Courage of Conscience Award. The unique and primary mission of this award is to honor and link high-profile peacemakers with well-known and lesser-known activists who are equally deserving, yet not well-known nor sufficiently supported. Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama came to receive our humble gesture of gratitude, as did Muhammad Ali and Maya Angelou, Thich Nhat Hanh, Dan Berrigan, and Vermont's Dave Dellinger. But more importantly, honored those unsung heroes, those who were never recognized for doing much the same work as high-profile recipients. Was it possible? We kept asking ourselves to take the pedagogy of the oppressed and apply it to the peace movement in the United States, to these children, these kids with special needs. Well, here we are 50 years later, and there is sufficient proof that what Paulo Freire did in Brazil, the Life Experience School did in Sherburne. And so the dream of liberation in the field of special education has survived. Our students stand up for themselves. They're willing, when necessary, to make a point, to protest, to take to the streets, and on occasion get arrested doing civil disobedience. As I prepare to retire after half a century as director of the Life Experience School in the Peace Abbey, I do so with gratitude for what the students have committed themselves to and the example they have set for me. The school made a long-term commitment to the individuals enrolled and continued to serve their needs long after they turned 22. Our group now consists of intergenerational mix of individuals whose ages range from the late 20s all the way up to the late 60s. Like nearly all dreams of liberation born of tragedy and suffering, the Life Experience School dream was improbable, elusive, and on nearly every count refused to conform to institutional notions of how to teach subject matter in schools, as we experimented with different ways to create meaning in the lives of those enrolled. At its heart, the Life Experience School in Peace Abbey sought to empower its students to be actively involved in peacemaking in every aspect of their lives and to engage their hearts and souls to bring out personal, interpersonal change, and in the process nudge the world a bit closer to sanity and decency, tolerance, peace, and love. The writings of Jonathan Kozol, Neil Postman, John Holt, and so many others spoke a certain truth about revolutionary approaches in education. Their teachings we put to practice. This radical nudging of which I refer took on many forms over the decade. On more than one occasion, we stood with our students with disabilities to say no to discrimination and help bring about the name change of the state agency that was responsible for their services. They demanded that the R word be removed from the agency's name. With the guidance and support of the Peace Abbey, the students embraced nonviolent civil disobedience to address this particular injustice in their lives. We also took the opportunity to humbly burn the school's license and certification that had the word retardation on it. 4 of us were arrested and jailed and appeared in court. And I'll always remember the judge hearing the case agreed the R word was offensive and dismissed the case. What we were doing was just following the great examples of peacemakers who went before us. And as to assure that the names and stories of great peacemakers are passed on to the next generation, the Life Experience School and Peace Abbey sought to give form to the concept of liberation and nonviolence in the building of the Pacifist Memorial in Sherburne. The 9-foot bronze statue of Mahatma Gandhi and the 6 walls of remembrance surrounding the statue is where the memory of courageous women and men are celebrated, preserved, and enshrined. There we honor those who dared to embrace the fragile and oftentimes contentious notion that peace is not only possible, but possible through peaceful means. War is avoidable, the memorial proclaims. Violence is not inevitable, it bears witness. To date, over 65 plaques honor the extraordinary contributions of Margaret Mead, Martin Luther King Jr., Howard Zinn, Dan Berrigan, Cesar Chavez, John Lennon, Muhammad Ali, and Maya Angelou, and a plaque honoring civil rights activist and comedian Dick Gregory was recently added. We accomplished this because we were not deterred in 1994 by the town of Sherburne's insistence that we go before the town meeting to present the memorial, which was to be built on private land. We subverted the protocol to get the memorial built, which was the only method that would result on its actual creation. Peacemaking at times requires subversive activity. And may I interject this, if I may? If there isn't a memorial to the great peacemakers in Vermont, I would like to assist you in any way I can in creating one as part of my retirement project. To address the unconscious statistic of 9 out of 10 people being killed in war being civilian, the school and Abbey created a memorial stone and carriage which weigh over 2.5 tons, and organize hundreds of people to physically pull it 500 miles over 33 days to Arlington National Cemetery. We were informed that it would take an act of Congress for it to be placed at Arlington, which there wasn't sufficient support for, but we brought it to Arlington anyway. We left on July 4th, 1999, and arrived on August 6th, the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. Though it was rejected and impounded by the Capitol Police, this act of subversive activity led to the stone eventually being shipped to Nagasaki and pulled to Hiroshima on the 60th anniversary of the atomic bombings. That stone remains at the epicenter of Hiroshima. It got there, and it's worth pointing out. It got there because we were told Congress had not approved the stone's placement at Arlington. We brought it there anyway. And again, subversive activity proved necessary to reach an outcome that, in this case, was more than we could have ever hoped for. So what can we conclude over this past 50-year odyssey of peacemaking? Among other things, one must be willing to risk criticism, at times their freedom, if necessary, to move forward with the dream of peace and stand up against societal structures that make peace impossible. We must recognize that subverting the power structure is part and parcel of peacemaking. If you play by the rules that rule the world that is on a collision course with catastrophe, you are creating more obstacles to your visionary goal. As one particular individual with disabilities at our school understands, doing nonviolent civil disobedience allows you the opportunity to speak truth to power, to stand in front of a judge in a courtroom and speak words that will be recorded in the court record versus a simple snapshot taken for a Facebook post. So we move forward, passing the subversive baton of peacemaking mission to the next generation with the hope that they will create and install more public works of art that promote peace and nonviolence. Past this memorial will continue to have plaques added over time, and the Courage of Conscience Award will be bestowed on individuals and organizations that inspire us well into the future. Yet it is well to ask, what family traditions, projects, undertakings will you be passing on when you retire from the fray? What unique personal and family traditions of peacemaking will you be handing on to the next generation? These are questions we have to ask ourselves as we enter new phases of life. Turning 75 requires that I hand over what I have helped fashion with a small band of conscientious activists. Interestingly, speaking to you today is the first occasion for me to openly discuss my retirement. What I will not be retiring from, however, is serving as a support person on the path of subversive peacemaking. I will be there to encourage others to stick their neck out and join them when I can. This is because my brand of peacemaking was forged through the crucible of a war in Southeast Asia and the death of my two mentors. In the words of recipient of the Courage of Conscience Award and friend Barry Crimmins, so long as I draw breath, there will be a peace movement, and I know you feel the same. I would like to also point out the many dimensions of peace movement that I will be part of, the dimensions of that intrinsically link both the human and animal kingdoms. And finally, I would like to go on record that being vegan over the past 30 years is considered the single most significant contribution my wife and I have made on the path of peacemaking. So friends, subvert the power structure as you see fit, and know that what we do for others, we do for ourselves. Work for peace, make your life a living testimony to peace, and if you are not already embracing a plant-based diet for the sake of all sentient beings, make that a priority. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share a bit of this 50-year journey of peacemaking. And I would like to close with a translation of the prayer of St. Francis that we adopted for the Special Peace Corps, which is the activist wing of the Life Experience Group. And we gather around the peacemakers table and we say these words in unison to remind us of why we come together each day to work for peace. And it goes as follows. When I am hungry, send me someone to feed. When I am thirsty, send me someone who needs a drink. When I am cold, send me someone to warm. When I am sad, send me someone to cheer. When I need understanding, send me someone who needs mine. When I need to be looked after, send me someone to care for. And when I only think of myself, draw my thoughts to another. Thank you very much.